I'm absolutely convinced that we live in one of the stupidest timelines out there in the multiverse, and no, Marvel, you did not trademark the term multiverse. It's actually a part of string theory, but we're not going to get into that. What we are going to get into is the story of Bodega Bro and his journeys throughout New York City, and how people got big mad over the fact that he was talking about the little corner stores that are featured prominently throughout New York City, and how almost every single reaction to this, whether they are for or against Bodega Bro, is actually incredibly, embarrassingly stupid and idiotic. But before we get into that, this video is sponsored. We're going to throw it over to the sponsor, and then we're going to come back on the other side. Gas is around $5 a gallon across the country. Some places are seeing $7 a gallon. Rent is climbing around $2,000 per month in this nation, and if you want to buy yourself a 10-year-old Honda, it's going to run you close to $20,000. Welcome to inflation, folks. It's at 8.6% and it's climbing. Things ain't looking like they're getting any better. So what can you do? You can throw your money into the market, try to buy low, but with inflation rates this high and the Fed raising the interest rate to not nearly enough to counteract it, you're going to have to get about a 10% return a year in order to cover your costs. That's just not realistic at this point in time. One of the things that I recommend you do is hedge against this inflation. Go over to noblegoldinvestments.com and talk to them about a precious metals IRA, and you can receive this month a 1/10 of an ounce American gold coin. It's absolutely wonderful. It has some weight to it. You can feel the real money effect, and it's about the size of a dime. Noble Gold has a team of experts that have made it their mission to put you on the path to financial safety. They'll let you know the do's and don'ts. Call them at 877-646-5347 or go to noblegoldinvestments.com. Use my pinned affiliate link in the pinned comment and the top of the description. Again, that number, 877-646-5347, noblegoldinvestments.com. So I saw the story on the internet.com, on Twitter, which of course is where all the bad news and the broken dreams on the internet exist, of Bodega Bro, a guy who went through some bodegas in New York City and criticized them because he kept Googling grocery stores, and this is what he came up with. Now, of course, the reaction to this was not to laugh at this amusing video, because it's actually quite funny. It was for somebody with 68 followers to contact his employer, ultimately leading to his firing. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to get into that. But first and foremost, we have to go with the original premise. We have to talk about the video. So I'm going to play the video for you, and we'll see where you guys out there on the internet.com align with Bodega Bro.
Okay, so I just moved to New York, and I'm trying to go grocery shopping, and so I type in, like, grocery stores on my Apple Maps.
So the first thing that we know for a fact that he did wrong is use Apple Maps. Now, I know Google is an evil company, but let's be honest, Google, with all the data that it snatches up from you, actually produces a way better Maps app. I know a lot of you are on that Waze train. Waze is owned by Amazon, but I tend to like Googling it in the Google Maps, and therefore I end up finding what I'm looking for. The second mistake that this person made is that he Googled grocery stores and not supermarkets. One of the reasons why I find this video so amusing is because a lot of these delis, a lot of these little corner stores, call themselves deli and grocery, so they show up in your Google search results. This could have all been avoided if not for the fact that this person didn't realize that even though they're called grocery stores everywhere in the country, the technical accurate name for them is supermarket, and he could have just found what he was looking for by Googling supermarket. But let's continue.
And, like, every fucking one I go to, like, I'm walking too, like, they're like this shit, or like fucking like this. Like, bro, that's not a grocery store. Like, I'm trying to get, like, eggs, yogurt, like, cheese, like, shit like that, right?
Now, the third thing that I find incredibly amusing about Bodega Bro's breakdown of the city is the fact that he showed that they are on multiple different corners, and he says it's not a grocery store. Now, what he means is they're not a supermarket, because these places don't typically have meat or fresh produce, although some of them do have fresh produce. However, I don't recommend buying your produce from them because they're incredibly expensive. I know a person who actually bought a mango for $4 at one of these places, and that's just insane. That's crazy in every possible way. Don't ever do that. Just go to the grocery stores that are actually supermarkets, and you'll find what you need. You see, I'm actually jumbling the term grocery store and supermarket. On top of that, one of the things that is hilarious about this video is that the three things that he named are all definitely 100% found within those little delis.
I'm trying to get, like, eggs, yogurt, like, cheese, like shit like that, right?
You can easily get milk from one of those places. All of these places have delis, so you can actually get fresh sliced cheese in these places. And yogurt is also found in the dairy section. One of the reasons why I found this video so funny is because I could tell that he was joking about these stores. He was just hamming up what they actually do and don't have because this was made for entertainment value. Now, a lot of people took this video way too seriously, and that's insane in every possible way. But in reality, if you guys were wondering, if you were curious, all of these places 100% have milk. The ones that are called delis 100% have cheese, and there is yogurt available in, I want to say, 95% of these places. Now, should you buy it for the price that they're charging? Probably not, except for the deli meats and the milk. That's comparable anywhere. But the yogurt, no way.
Like, look at this place. Hey yo, Ak, let me get a bacon, egg, and cheese. The Aki way. Like, you know those TikToks? Like, I'm fucking doing it. Like, I've literally been to like 5 of those now. And like, I don't know what the fuck I'm about to do for dinner. Like, where are the Krogers and like the Whole Foods at? Like, I'm about to eat fucking like cereal and ramen for dinner. Like, what the fuck?
Now this video gets an 8 out of 10 from me. Bodega Bro, I approve of you, not just me. The actual Justice Warrior channel approves of you, and you have secured that 8 out of 10 rating. It's funny, it actually has an element of truth, and it has one of my favorite things in videos about New York City, which is people who don't live here, moving here, and being in awe of how different they are from where they actually came from. I enjoy it. It's all A+, it's all in good fun, and obviously this led to outrage on the internet because we can never have any fun. A mild joke is the worst crime that you can commit. What this guy should have actually done is loot these stores, burn them down, and then people would have called him a civil rights activist, and he wouldn't have been able to be fired because we all know for a fact that he would have been labeled by the media as an abstract idea, not an actual criminal or member of a criminal organization. But overall, great stuff, and people for some reason are taking this way too seriously. I mean, there's a lot of people who are even defending him who just buy into the premise that there are no supermarkets in the Bronx or in New York City, which is just absurd. You can't go more than 5 minutes, and the maximum you would have to go is 15 minutes, and you will find yourself multiple different grocery stores. They're everywhere. It only takes between 5 and 20,000 people to sustain a grocery store in any actual area, and the population of the Bronx is over 1.4 million. If you don't get that there's some stuff that you may have to travel a little further to, but significantly less far than people out in the Midwest of the country, or in Texas, or anywhere that's not a big urban area, then you're crazy. And we're going to talk about, by the way, the myth of the food desert and how myths like this actually make New York City worse and actually get rid of a bunch of family-owned grocery stores. But first, we got to go to this person that I found in a Lauren Southern video who is a total wet blanket, and he's crying about this video, and he is among the people that can really distill the outrage from people on the left related to this. We're going to laugh at this because it's absurd, but we got to throw it over there. Thank you, Lauren Southern, for this clip that I'm stealing from your video.
There's so much to say.
Yeah, there's so much to say. Already, you know from the open of this that you're dealing with an insanely progressive woke scold who has no fun and is the human embodiment of a wet blanket. But let's hear about how there's so much to say.
He probably doesn't want to hear what I have to say, and that's fine. This video isn't for him. This video is for all the people who always say, Dutch, why do you get mad about people moving to New York? And it's because they often have attitudes like that. They come to the city, in this case the Bronx, and instead of integrating themselves into their community, they just make a mockery of it. I mean, what, he's been here like 2 days, and he's found a way to make fun of the stores that many people in the community rely on.
He's been here for only a few days, and he's making a mockery of the stores that people in the community rely on. Please, for the love of God, go outside, enjoy yourself, breathe some fresh air, get a life. What the hell is wrong with you? He was making mild jokes about these little stores that he is not familiar with. And by the way, the closest thing that you guys will know these stores as, if you're not from a major urban area, is convenience stores. What he's talking about is convenience stores. Oh, but it's a mockery. And this is why when people say, Dutch, why do you get so mad that people move into New York City? I say, this is why. Because people don't integrate. They're making a mockery of it. I can't believe it. The community relies on these stores. But let's hear why the community is forced to rely on these stores.
Stores that people have to rely on because the supermarket he's so desperately looking for doesn't exist because he's moved to a city which is historically and still today systematically deprived certain neighborhoods that are predominantly black and brown and or working class, of basic resources.
That's right. He went there, he pulled up the racism angle because this guy moved to an area that allegedly, historically, has been systematically deprived of resources, especially in the black and brown areas. There are just no grocery stores throughout the Bronx, and this is told to you by somebody who definitely would not go in the Bronx unless he absolutely had to. Of course, they're just depriving them of all the grocery stores. The evil white racists were like, no grocery stores for you, because black and brown communities, even though, again, it's actually way easier to open a grocery store in these areas, the only major barrier to doing so is the fact that people steal from them in these high crime areas, thus making their business model more vulnerable. So if anything, if there's less grocery stores in those areas, it is due to the fact that the people in there are stealing from them and depriving people in their community of those resources. But again, just nonsensical food desert garbage from somebody who's clearly a Brooklyn hipster who would have nothing to do with any of the bad neighborhoods of the Bronx, would avoid them if he absolutely possibly could, and probably would change seats if he sat next to somebody on the train and they said they were from the Bronx.
I know you're going to say it's not that serious, but it is. How would you feel if somebody came in your house uninvited and started making fun of all your furniture? So I am not at all mad about somebody moving to New York. I'm mad about people moving to New York and having attitudes like that. There's comedy and then there's mockery, and there's a very clear difference between the two.
There's comedy and then there's mockery, and there's a very, very big difference between the two. Again, there's not that big of a difference between comedy and mockery, and by the way, a lot of mocking can be quite comedic, like in this instance. And by the way, if you were to show the people who worked in these stores, the owner of this store, this video, they would probably laugh. They would give it a good chuckle, because if you've ever been in these stores, which I doubt this person actually has ever been in, because that's how removed from reality in New York City they actually are, you know that these people have great senses of humor. They enjoy it. There's like an actual community element in these places. You get to know them. It's very nice. They make you sandwiches, unbelievable sandwiches in all of these places. That's really the draw of them and what makes them distinct from the other stores, and why people will sometimes pay a little bit more for their groceries that they don't need to buy from there, because there are in fact grocery stores in New York City, because you get a good sandwich, you meet people, it's wonderful. It's like a little community gathering place. And again, I didn't see this guy on TikTok railing against the Black Lives Matter looters and rioters destroying these small family-owned places. But whatever, it's systematic deprivation, even though this myth has been debunked by NPR of all places, because it's absurd in every possible way. Rural areas, not urban inner city areas, are less likely to live close to a grocery store because small populations often aren't enough to sustain a grocery store within their town. So people drive 30, 40 minutes out to go to the grocery store, and if you compare that to the 10 to 15 minutes of travel time that a New Yorker would have to do maximum in order to get to a grocery store, that is completely and obviously no big deal. What this boils down to is people trying to blame others for the problems from within communities. You guys are all aware of the fact that we have an obesity problem in the United States of America, so because you can't blame the people who are eating bad crap, not exercising enough, for the choices that they make, the food desert myth was put forward out there. It started in England and it's moved to the United States, which pushed heavily by Michelle Obama, and therefore, it's not their fault, because it must be an access issue. They must not have any access. What we see with all of these arguments being put forward by the left wing is that they decide something must be true, and then they work backwards in order to get to that conclusion. And that's what we're dealing with right here. Again, there are plenty of grocery stores in the Bronx. There are plenty of places where you can get fresh produce. Even some of these delis will have fresh produce. Produce in some of these places is actually the best throughout the entire city of New York. If you're a fan of Seinfeld, you may have seen an episode where Kramer got banned from buying fruit at one of these places, and he sent Jerry to go buy fruit on his behalf because he didn't want to go back to the grocery store out of trying this. And if you actually remember videos from my channel, when we talked about the success of Asians, one of the stories that I talked about was one of these little Asian grocers that went to the pier at like 3 o'clock in the morning to handpick the best produce in order to have it on display for the customers, because that's the edge that these small operations are willing to get. So make no mistake, even though some of these places don't have much more than snacks and some deli meats, some of them actually have the best produce in the entire city. Not to mention the various number of fruit stands that are way easier to open in these areas due to the fact that they're lower income, thus the zoning restrictions are less difficult. However, there is a push in New York City based on the myths being put forward by this imbecile in order to get grocery stores into high-end developments. So if you build up luxury housing, then you're actually given a subsidy if you keep part of that housing for a grocery store based on the idea that there are no grocery stores in these areas and we need the government involved in making sure that there's grocery stores. So what ultimately ends up happening is, due to the fact that wet blankets like this person believe these inaccurate myths about food deserts and they vote based on those beliefs, is we get bad government policy that ends up subsidizing high-end grocery stores for rich people that puts these little independent operations out of business, and it puts the regular grocery stores that actually serve the people of the community, that actually have the kind of foods that these people want to eat. If you've never been to a Latin American grocery store in New York City, I highly recommend it, especially if you're one of those organic food weirdos, because one of the things that you'll find in the Latin American grocery stores and in the Asian grocery stores is that same kind of weird stuff that you like, you know, those weird powders or flours or whatever that you can't eat because you're pretending to be gluten-free, are actually available in Asian and Hispanic grocery stores for significantly cheaper, because it's just a normal part of their diet and it's not some niche item like it would be at Whole Foods. But Whole Foods and all these companies are getting massive subsidies from the city of New York based on the arguments being put forward by the people who don't like Bodega Bro because they're buffoons and they think that poor people are somehow invalids and they just have no access to anything. How would they even possibly eat healthy because they can't even find fruit? If they're fat, it must be because there's no vegetables within a 50-mile radius of where they live. How could they possibly do that? Wow, they're such victims. Did I mention systematic, structural disablement of the resources in the area? We all know that Jim Crow segregation in the Bronx forbidded all the grocery stores from going in the minority neighborhoods because the evil white racists were like, let's starve them out because reasons or whatever, and nobody who wanted to make profit selling groceries decided that they were going to open up in those areas. Yeah, sure. Now, Bodega Bro did a follow-up where he bought stuff from the delis, and he ultimately ended up giving that out to the homeless, and people, some of them liked it, and he even said in that video that a lot of people, for no reason, are going to hate on that, because, you know, that's what people do on the internet.com, they have nothing better to do, but it was a nice gesture, totally unnecessary, especially when you consider the fact that he has an income problem, because he was fired from his job over the initial video. Now, the company that fired him is a company called Outreach, and their Twitter account is outreach_IO, and they fired him based on a tweet from somebody who had 68 followers who didn't even strongly demand his firing. They talked about how they took swift action against their employee, threw him under the bus, because, you know, you can't have your employee enjoying himself in New York City, making some jokes here and there. How dare you do that? What if people assumed that maybe based on the fact that he made a joke, that he's somehow an evil white racist? Gotta get rid of him, and they cut him off immediately, just showing how cowardly they are. And they deserve all the hatred and vitriol that is directed toward them. They deserve to be shunned by anybody. I don't know what they do, but if you're doing business with them, I would stop doing business with them, because you can't trust a company that would immediately throw their people under the bus just because some anonymous person with an anime avatar with 68 followers said fire this person or even mildly complained about this person. Bodega Bro is unemployed at this moment because he made a joke about New York City that everybody is trying to add meaning to, when in reality, on its face, it was just funny and not actually that much rooted in truth. The fun parts were what was rooted in truth, but everybody trying to extrapolate about how he was a Midwestern person, not corrupted by New York City, or how New Yorkers got so outraged that they attacked their food deserts, whatever, are just trying to inject meaning into something that really was just amusing. There's a lot of corner stores in New York City. If you go to them, you won't find a full pantheon of groceries. That doesn't mean there are no grocery stores in New York City. Sometimes you might actually have to take a bus for a few stops. Sometimes you might have to travel more than 5 minutes away on foot in order to find them, but I assure you the grocery stores exist even in the Bronx, even though the evil white racists that built New York City decided a long time ago that people in the Bronx weren't going to have grocery stores. Stop making bad policies, stop making assumptions, stop adding on to this like it has some meaning. What ended up happening was a guy made a joke, people with no sense of humor complained, he got fired, end of story. But hey, those are just my thoughts, so let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like this video, you can show me by leaving a like, you can subscribe for more content, follow me on all my social medias, support me via the support links in the description box of this video. This has been me talking about Bodega Bro and how we did nothing wrong. Till next time.